live in a world where the youth is enthusiastically gearing up for the next election. People are now care more about the essence of democracy. This debate shouldn't really be about whether democracy is good or bad, that we agree with, but the way at which how these developing countries are going to be more democratic, how does it look like, or how it's going to be less democratic, and how does it look like? Because coming from a leader of opposition, and so far as their arguments go, I feel like the way that they're trying to describe it is that things are going to more or less stay the same and not have any sort of shift. This is an uncertain that they have to prove. Two clarifications. What is the most important thing about the debate? It's the state of the voter base and how they feel towards this process. This is because if the opposition is not able to prove that these voters are going to be more subservient to whichever populist leader is going to exist in the world, even despite the many opposition they have right now from the youth, or if these developing countries are going to collapse under liberal democracy that they talked about, then they don't have clear incentives to prove that this is going to be the trajectory of the states. The metrics are simple. It's how the voter base is going to react and how does that side with government or opposition. And second is, of course, the knee-jerk reaction of these countries, these states, and these governments. Few floating responses before my extensions. First, the erosion of democracy is different from democracy being difficult. We on side government understand that it will probably continue to be an uphill battle, but we need to understand that the erosion of democracy presupposes a lot of difficult and challenging things which are not likely to happen. With a complete constitutional overhaul in order to weaken and prop out a new form of government. For example, the recent charter change that was proposed by Bongbong Marcos in having these 2 terms, 5 years per term, was not passed because of the opposition that existed there, because that is something that is practiced by those people as a form of democracy. Second, even if the cronies and bad people win, they literally are still using and riding the coattails of democracy. This is the POI coming from Kuya Joseph that was not proven. Yes, these bad faith actors have perverse motivations, but they still bound by the constitution and laws of the land. As what Kuya Joseph already preempted, the resistance of evil in itself is a good and a motivation, right? And the trend that we're seeing, case in point, has BBM enacted martial law or EDS Season 3? No. These oligarchs and political elites want to hold on to power. This means using democracy as a move forward to their agenda. Regardless of democracy or not, the exercise of it as a tool is going to be used by both the ruling party and the opposition. Third, there is a lack of positive case coming from leader of opposition to meaningfully explain what the shift of less democratic really looks like. Does this look like civil unrest, civil war, civil disobedience, all of which are trends which are well within their rights to exercise the constitution and prop up opposition parties, even if unsuccessful? The development is well aware that democracy is not perfect. We cannot cherry pick the good parts and say that, yay, democracy is nice, and then abandon it anytime if things get uncomfortable, right? The hope in the eyes of the youth is alive and well, stronger than ever with their eagerness to participate and be the change they want to see. Before I go to extensions, POIs.
Hi. So this debate is about the net trend of the majority of developing states. So you have to prove the majority, not just the case in the Philippines.
All right, yes. That's where I'm going to go to my first extension, like the exact comparative between the more and less democratic. So the question is simple. Over the next 10 years, how are individuals and institutions going to react? First characterization I want to prove is why is the youth hopeful. Activists from center left to far left within these countries will always fight no matter what. This doesn't just happen in the Philippines. This happens in Thailand, Cambodia. This happens in other countries that are within that liberal democracy that you guys are talking about. The incentives for this is simple. Do you really want to hand over the keys to people you do not trust? Second, national democratic organizations have transnational networks which connects to them with other countries, for example, coming from sea to Africa and many other regions. No matter what kind of government these people are going to be under, if they see something wrong, they speak up. This is in and of itself a practice of democracy. So long as these people continue fighting, the youth will have an anchor. And second, why is the government going to react accordingly? They're still going to be servants of the people at the end of the day. The moment they show even a slight bit of authoritarian tendencies, people are going to react. This has happened in Nepal. This has happened in Indonesia. This has happened in even India and Pakistan and all those other developing countries. Let's dive deeper into the mechanisms. First, imagine a leader within a developing country trying to assert any gist of authoritarian tendency or just this proposal to even shift slightly, they could it called as fascist in their state. The immediate reaction of the youth is outrage, mobilization in the street, spreading the word in social media, and making multiple calls for action, or in the current status quo, trying to find viable candidates for the next electoral cycle. The propagation is simple. Sure, there's going to be pushbacks from these elite captured states, but portions of the voter base are able to pick and select their preferred candidates. Who cares about the state policies, even if trade unions are illegal within those countries, but there are still trade union strikes. That happens, and that is a practice of democracy. The way that opposition is able to sustain their movement, like what they're trying to push us, is because there is already a buckle back coming from a lot of these leaders, because they cannot show large sense of repression or else they get reprimanded. Again, people are empathetic enough, and the more they see these sorts of state violence, should there be in these developing countries, they speak out against them. The comparative is simple. We provide the prerequisite chain of action coming from the bottom up and the adjustments of the top dogs of the state. And this is where my call is going to be extremely important. The rising trend on their side is non-existent. The description is pretty much the status quo, which brings me to my second extension on the reactions of these conservatives, because I feel like they're counting on the fact that there's going to be more conservative voter base, right? Okay, extension. Developing countries are caught in the crossfire of imperial powers colliding in the status quo. Conservatives from developing countries are starting to notice this. For example, them being more open to criticizing Israel for the bombing in the Middle East and wanting their politicians to not be associated with those people. A lot of the conservatives who buy this fake ass democracy that apparently exists are middle-aged to old people, but they are not as vocal as the youth. They do not have mass communications that the youth have with social media. So even if these older people are going to have, I guess, more in population, they don't have the vocalize their opinions. They do not drown out the social media presence of these youths when it comes to like these electoral cycles. This is the key argument that unlocks this rising trend they want to push from us, because we're able to prove that even these supporters of faux democracies are getting more and more woke. This is compounded by the fact that the rising voter base, the Gen Z, is likely to take over the millennials as the main voter base. The impact is simple. A lot of younger people are now willing to step up. A lot of younger people are now caring about the state of international politics and even national politics. That in and of itself makes these developing countries more democratic in the future. Propose.